Hey, everybody. Good Wednesday morning. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Friday, we do have a Heroes Breakfast. If you're not familiar with this, it's a pretty simple concept. You come out as we are broadcasting live from Scramblers on Friday, of course. Friday Road Show. We've always got out there. And if you're a veteran, every so often we do a Heroes Breakfast with some of our partners, Scramblers being one of them, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, and the Warriors Journey, an incredible organization. And you're going to get free breakfast if you're a veteran. It's as simple as that, 6 to 9 this Friday. It's not every Friday. We are at, I know this could be confusing for some people. We're out there doing the show every Friday, but about once a month we have that free breakfast for veterans with our partners. And it's a great opportunity for you to come out and to join us. You don't have to be a veteran to come out. You don't get the free breakfast, but great opportunity to come out and with a veteran. It's a busy morning, I'll tell you that. So if you like it to be just a bit hopping, it could very well be the day for you. We'll start off with some pretty good news. Uncharted territory. Rasmussen poll finding that the U.S. is in uncharted territory after 48% of Americans believe the U.S. is on the right track, and this is a high number historically speaking. The poll of 1,810 likely U.S. voters found that 47% of respondents say that we're headed on the wrong track. 48 said we are headed down the right track. The number marks the highest rating for the country since Rasmussen Reports began conducting the right track, wrong track survey nearly 20 years ago. A rolling average of the past 4 nights also found that 50% of respondents believe the country is headed in the right direction. The numbers are a boost from the previous administration, where only 32% of respondents believe the country was headed in the right direction last year, 63% saying it was headed in the wrong direction. Numbers also an increase from just last week, where 45% said they believed the country was headed in the right direction. And so this is, since these numbers have been evaluated, since they've been gathered and evaluated, it is the highest level that they've been. And, I think that part of what Trump benefits from in this evaluation, opinion of people, is increasingly people understand that when there is a great deal of damage that is done, you can't just snap your fingers and undo it and get things back to the way they were prior to the damage being done. It takes time. It'd be nice if that were the case. We spent 4 years of policy that increasingly people recognize we don't even know who was behind the policy. You got a bunch of people that were running around the White House making decisions, which every day new information comes out, and some of the latest information is that you had presidential decisions being made by unnamed people that had economic impacts, economic decisions affecting you, affecting me, affecting the value of our dollar, which translates to how much we can purchase at the grocery store. All of it's easy because it's such a new concept here in the United States to disconnect that from what was happening to us at that particular time. And when we learn through Biden White House insiders and Democrat insiders that are now revealing things about what has occurred during the last 4 years of the previous administration, is that there were unnamed people, unappointed, people that just were these people in the White House that were making decisions impacting the economy because Biden wasn't capable of doing so. Do you remember that economy? You think about the prices at the grocery store. You think about the prices of everything. Inflation, just punishing inflation to the average American. And We don't even know who some of these people are that were behind the scenes making decisions that had an impact on that. Of course, a huge injection came from the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which did the opposite. Biden, are we going to argue he even knew what was in it? To what degree did these people in the White House that were apparently actually running things have influence over that Inflation Reduction Act, putting pet projects in, putting more and more spending in? What did they tell Biden was in it versus what wasn't in it? These are the real-life implications of this massive political scandal and huge lie that was told by the Democrat Party and, to a large part, the messaging carried and validated by the media. You take all of that, and then those same people right out of the gate, I mean, what, Trump, 1 week into office, and they were running around saying the price of eggs hasn't dropped. He lied about that. The price of eggs hasn't dropped. And he didn't finish the war. You know, he said that on day one that was going to end. After the previous 4 years, there's a significant portion of the American population that's like, all right, let's be serious here. You cannot undo 4 years of punishing policies to the economy just with snapping your fingers. And yeah, maybe Trump said he would end that war on day one, but Trump says things like that. Now let's be adults and be realistic about what it is that is actually playing out here. And I believe that benefits Trump to a large degree is that more mature look at the landscape and an understanding that these things are not things that, just overnight can be fixed. And I believe that's why, despite some of the messiness and a lot of the noise, you still have a record number of Americans, according to this poll, since the poll started, saying we are headed on the right track versus those that say we aren't. Now, there's another reason he's benefiting from this, and I have some audio I want to play from Stephen Moore coming up. It is the overblown nature of everything. So, yeah, you got like 2% inflation, which a lot of economists say it's a tiny bit high. You'd like it to be a little bit lower. But after Democrats spend weeks talking about how Trump is going to bring upon the Great Depression and these tariffs are going to cause inflation to go up, the average family, it's going to cost them $287,000 more a year just to live, and then none of that happens. Trump benefits from that as well, because they create this sense of this massive fear so that when the reality hits, and it may not be like 5-star news, but 3.5 star. The 3.5 star seems pretty darn good compared to what it was that the media was telling us was going to happen. It's expectations. And ironically, what occurs is the Democrats and the media actually help Trump by creating this sense of doom and gloom, creating these expectations of complete economic turmoil and disaster. And so just by virtue of that not occurring, seems like a pretty good deal. Like, hey, maybe Trump knows what he's doing here. Weather coming up in a moment. Also, the latest traffic. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447 KSGF. Right now, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Thursday, showers with a high near 68. And looking ahead to Friday, sunny skies with a high near 74.
Want to play a bit of audio. This is from former Trump administration official Steve Moore. And he's talking about the lack of inflation that we were all told was going to accompany tariffs. And this isn't to say that we still may not see it, but and you might be able to find certain items here or there in which there is, some sort of slight increase. But what has occurred here is a detachment from the way it was presented by the media and the Democrats, that immediately, we were all just going to be in devastation mode, going to the grocery store, everything. They created this environment in which people believed every single thing was going to see prices go up. Every food item, every sanitary item, everything that you need was going to go up in price. And, of course, that hasn't happened. Well, let me play first Stephen Moore's comments, and this was, I believe, yesterday on Fox News.
And it is then it is an inflation premium. Steve Moore, I'd say it's a pretty calm inflation report. This is from Unleash Prosperity. Yeah, I don't see much going on.
Look, I've been wrong. I thought these tariffs would cause higher inflation. Tariffs are taxes, and consumers bear some of the cost of that, but it just isn't showing up in the numbers right now. It just really isn't. And if you look at, almost any measure of inflation right now, it's pretty tame. I mean, somewhere in the 2.5% to 3% range, which is a little bit higher than we want, but hardly a catastrophe.
All right, now, so Steve Moore was one who has been vocal, as a lot of other Republicans, fiscal conservatives, honestly, just across the political spectrum. Now, the left, you dismiss their criticisms because they criticize it because it's Trump. I mean, when Biden announced increased tariffs on China 3 years into his administration, they praised it as wonderful. It was protecting jobs. It was going to be great for the automobile industry. So you can't take their criticism with any validity. But there are a lot of other people out there that the Steve Moores, the Rand Pauls, a lot of individuals that have argued against this approach when it comes to tariffs. And one of the reasons, of course, Steve Moore believed that it would, like a lot of others, this was just, all it was going to do is that there's never winners in these situations. And all it was going to do is just massively raise the prices on average Americans, and given the inflation that people had been dealing with because of the Biden years, that was obviously going to be something very painful and hopefully short-lived. And so far, it hasn't developed. And Steve Moore, to his credit here, is like, I was wrong. Now, I would like to hear, just because he is a respectable individual who has a grasp of how these things work, and he's honest as well, if he has any belief as to why it hasn't occurred. That I would be interested to hear. But there are a lot of the benefit to Trump here is because of the unrealistic expectations that were set that things were going to go horribly wrong. And some of that is built upon misconceptions when it comes to tariffs. And one of them is you hear, and you may know some of this, but it just, I don't know, it seemed like a good opportunity to address some of this stuff. When, for example, the headlines, Trump talks about a 50% tariff on European goods. Because of the way the media reports and the Democrats use their talking points, it is easy for the average person to believe that means that a product that cost $100 from Europe will now cost $150 because that's a 50% increase, right? That's a 50% tariff. That's not how it works. Looking at China specifically, that's probably a better example because they use slaves oftentimes for their labor, which allows them to create products at a much lower price than they actually sell it here in the United States. So, for example, let's say a shoe line, a sneaker tennis shoe line that they sell here in the United States, which of course they do. And if it cost, which these are numbers that aren't too far off, let's say that a shoe that is sold here in the United States for $100, it costs China $10 to make it. The tariff is on the $10, not the $100. So that means that you have a company, makes sneakers, and here it now will, quote, cost them because of the tariff, and that, again, these numbers have them simplistic for the purposes of the example here. Instead of it costing $10 to make a pair of shoes that are sold for $100, it will now cost $20 because of the tariff. Well, that's still an $80 profit. And this is where some of these companies they'll make decisions. Okay, do we pass that along and now charge $110 for a $100 pair of shoes, which again isn't that's not 100% inflation to the consumer. It's not a $200 pair of shoe, but a $110 pair of shoe. Or in order to stay competitive in the marketplace, they just eat that cost and they don't pass it along at all, or perhaps they pass along just a portion of it. Now, that isn't an argument that means that tariffs are always the right thing to do, but it is an explanation of how tariffs work that I think most people don't necessarily understand because of the media's hype and the Democrats' attempt to scare the living daylights out of people whenever they hear things like 50% tariff on European goods, 150% tariff on goods from China. And they want you to believe that means that the products you buy are going to double in price or, go up even more than that. Now, the benefit, again, to Donald Trump is creating that hysteria that doesn't then formulate, makes people think, oh, it didn't happen. I don't know this tariff increase. I'm not feeling it at all. Even if the average person might feel it just a tiny bit here and a tiny bit there, they don't actually feel it because they were expecting this massive blow. And that also at the same time demonstrates to the general public at large that they have no credibility when it comes to these issues. And that is something both the media and the Democrat Party obviously have been working very hard at for some time, and they have demonstrated to have a great deal of success with it also. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Want to say one last thing on the tariffs. As increasingly this has become a subject matter that people are talking about less and less, the average consumer. Now, there are a number of industries out there that obviously still are, the impact on industries is arguably going to be different, some not at all, but some with a great deal of impact versus the average consumer. But in terms of the average consumer, people really aren't talking about it so much. I mean, other than maybe delayed products or, but in terms of this fear mongering that all of a sudden you're going to get evicted from your home because you can't afford to purchase products and all of your money's going to that instead of rent, people aren't worried about this any longer. And there are very reputable people. I mentioned Steve Moore earlier and played audio in which he admitted, I was wrong. This massive inflation thing that I believed would occur because of the tariffs hasn't occurred. Rand Paul is one. He is an elect and very respectable and honest in his perspective of these things. He is very against utilizing tariffs as a form of dealing with other nations, whether it's trying to balance things out to make them more fair economically or to try and, for example, get a country like China to stop producing fentanyl to import into the United States. And oftentimes I see Democrats who, of course, presented Ronald Reagan as the worst world leader ever during the 80s, and sharing quotes of him talking about tariffs and against tariffs. And I would argue a couple of different things. And I think tariffs are, like a lot of things, it's not an end-all, be-all. You can use them poorly. You can use them wisely, I suppose. But things are much, much different than they were in the early 80s. The world commerce is much different. And when you have China as such a big player that benefits from slave labor, and you have American companies trying to compete when obviously American companies can't own slaves any longer, like China is able to. It is a massively uneven playing field that is affecting us in ways that it did not back in the 80s. Now, it did to some degree, but the world is just so much smaller now. And so just in terms of the application and the results, I don't think it's fair to look at the way that our world dealt with other countries, particularly when it came to economies, back in the 80s, and then carbon copy that to today. Some similarities, but a lot of differences. And also, I would say the argument that tariffs are a tool that should not be utilized because nobody ever wins would be more effective if there weren't tariffs all over the place anyhow. They already exist everywhere. So that we're in the game, whether we like it or not. The only question is, do we pretend as if we're not in the game? Do we let the rest of the world play by all of these other rules while we just say, nope, we don't like that, so we're not going to play that game? I would equate it to some degree with early voting. And the Trump campaign prior to this last election round, when he was running against Biden, as you may recall, was opposed to the early voting because of concerns that the votes might disappear, they wouldn't get counted, and so the big encouragement was to get out there and to vote on voting day. Well, Trump recognized that that didn't really work, and that the fact of the matter is the world has changed, the way that people vote has changed, and there are a lot of states that give allowances that other states can't really compete with when it comes to turning out the vote because of the ease at which people can vote early. So Trump said, the landscape has changed. All right, it exists. Early voting exists. We can ignore it and lose to it, or we can recognize that it exists and play the game better than the opposition. And I would argue that when it comes to tariffs, there are some parallels there, and that tariffs exist. Other countries use them against us. We can either ignore it and continue to lose in certain capacities, or, and I believe this is Trump's argument largely, we can acknowledge the reality that we're in and do it better than they do. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Thursday, showers with a high near 68. And looking ahead to Friday, sunny skies with a high near 74.
Why is it so hot in here?
I don't know. It really is hot.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
We're not allowed to have nice things.
You form a mechanical up in here.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. I mean, it's too bad we can't open these windows because it's relatively nice outside. I've never worked every. I think let me think this. I believe this is true. Every radio station that I've ever worked at had the most convoluted HVAC setup to where you'd be in one room and it would be a sauna and you'd be like, hey, where's the air for here? Oh, well, now we can't turn that down because it also controls the air for the other side of the building and it's really, really cold over there. So we have to keep what? That doesn't even make sense. Everywhere I've worked has always been that way.
It wasn't for me.
It seems like it,
Yeah.
as best I can tell.
I guess I had it lucky at my previous radio job because it was really nice over there.
The only exception might be my very first radio job for Ron Peterson over there, the Petersons in Carthage, KMXL and KDMO. But it was it wasn't as like sprawling out and I don't remember it being that way there. In my head, it may just be everywhere I've ever worked is that way, but I know more than one because this isn't the only place I've worked.
Maybe it's a rule.
It could be. It could be. I don't understand. It's got to be some reason set up that way. Do you know who the Chrisleys are?
I don't think so.
The Chrisleys, they had a reality TV show, and I don't even really know. Yeah, Chrisleys. The husband and wife, they went to prison for like tax fraud or something. And I don't even know necessarily. I wasn't that familiar. I knew of the show. Didn't watch it. Now, this is coming down to a pardon thing. Trump has done a pardon. And I think, I'm just going to put it out there, part of the intrigue, I think for a lot of people, is that the husband, his personality was such that a lot of people thought, I wonder if he is homosexual. He's just very effeminate. Now, that doesn't always mean, but then there was, I don't know whether it was admitted to or not, but there was an allegation from this other guy that they had an affair and all this sort of stuff. I don't know all the dirty details, but I do know that they eventually, I think it was for fraud or tax evasion and fraud, they were sentenced to a significant amount of time in prison. And Trump did a pardon, and of course he got the daughter on the phone to tell her about the pardon. And as usual, because Trump did this, people are just pitching a fit about it. There's this headline, for example, outrage. It's always outrage. Outrage erupts after Trump's Chrisley pardon as critics condemn what it says about president's regard for the law. Did we not just sit through the defense of a previous president pardoning his own son after he said he wouldn't do it and pardoned other people for crimes that they haven't even been charged with, giving them a blank get-out-of-jail-free card? Didn't even specify what the crime was. Just any crime. It turns out so-and-so murdered someone. Pardon. Are you serious? Now, first off, and listen, I don't know what his daughter, the Chrisley's daughter, spoke at the RNC, and they were obvious Trump supporters. Well, yes, and I'm sure Hunter Biden was a supporter of his dad, and I'm sure people that Bill Clinton pardoned, and George Bush pardoned, and Barack Obama pardoned, probably amongst those individuals were some supporters of the president that pardoned them. For Bill Clinton, in fact, one was a pretty good-sized donor. Mark Is it Mark Rich? Is that right? Anyhow, don't need to get bogged down in the details. This is another example of how the left loses all credibility. They cannot... There's no control gauge that they have with their rage. And because they can't apparently so far, because all the comments are like, well, clearly he doesn't have any respect for the law. Well, if pardoning someone as president means you don't have respect for the law, every president has pardoned people in the modern era. I don't know if there's some in the pre-modern era that never did any pardons, but that's not an uncommon thing. This is something that the president has the ability to do. That is to pardon people. This is not a new concept. This is not something that Trump decided as a dictator that he was going to create. This is sort of a constitutional authority that the president of the United States has. Now, did this particular couple deserve a pardon? I have no idea. But what I also do know is that critics aren't pointing out any reasons why this particular situation does not warrant a pardon. They're not articulating any sort of intellectual approach. They're not noting that, well, this particular sort of crime, on average, people serve this amount of time and pardons aren't done when it comes to financial crimes. None of that. They just paint it as Trump doesn't care about the rule of law, so he pardons people. And when that is the basis for your argument, and you just got finished telling the American people not, however many months ago, that pardoning your own son was A-okay, that pardoning people for crimes they haven't even yet been accused of is A-okay, it sort of falls just a little bit flat. But it is somewhat entertaining to watch the hysterics once again on full display. Trump derangement syndrome. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company getting a new roof. It is not considered a fun home repair. Some are, like a bathroom remodel or maybe new flooring, but a roof, doesn't typically fall in that category. And then there's the added stress of dealing with insurance, and that is why it is so very important to have a company that is not only familiar with that insurance process, but they can actually evaluate the scope of repairs needed and help determine if anything is missing in that scope. And that's why I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. When it comes to understanding the entire insurance process, they are professionals, and they will be in your corner every step of the way to make sure that entire roof install is as simple as possible. So whether you need a whole new roof or just a simple roof repair, schedule that free roof inspection with the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk text line. Trump should take copies of all the last-minute Biden pardons, use a crayon to cross out the names, and write a new name in the pardon for his people. Well, and this is another point. the quote outrage on the internet that Donald Trump pardoned the Chrisleys, this reality TV show family that went to prison for financial crimes. And I think one of them is tax evasion. I'm sorry, isn't that not part of what Hunter Biden also got pardoned for? Tax evasion? But the auto pin is increasingly believed to have been utilized by people that had no authority to use it. And some of this is based on, Attorney General Bailey explained this in a letter to the Department of Justice, that some of these crimes that Biden is said to have pardoned people for were crimes that he claimed he would never pardon anyone for, and that were violent crimes. These were violent criminals, some of them. Now, he also said he would never pardon his son. His excuse for that essentially being, well, because I didn't know that I'd have to. It's like, well, I just didn't know that he might be in danger of getting himself thrown in prison. If I'd known that, then I wouldn't have made that promise. But yeah, I mean, just the the Teflon, if you will, the invisible shield that Trump has around him that Democrats find themselves so frustrated over because it's like nothing. It just doesn't, it doesn't matter what he does. You all created this force field. You created it by justifying the same or even more egregious behavior, and then you turn around and expect people to be upset when Trump does it, or you accuse him of doing it. And this pardon is a perfect example of it. So when you're like, how could people be indifferent to the fact that he pardoned these people? Really? Are you serious? The first time I really, and I'll admit it, enjoyed watching Democrats find themselves extremely frustrated because they had created an atmosphere that backfired on them, and it was when Arnold Schwarzenegger was running for governor of California. And he was running as a Republican. And so Democrats, being panicked that he might win, they began bringing up all of these, old stories or allegations of sexual harassment. And it's like, I'm sorry. Did we not just, not long prior to that, spend the Clinton years being told, hey, that's private business. What someone does, even if it's harassment in the privacy of their own time, we're not electing the Pope. I believe it was Barbara Streisand who said that. And so then, particularly out in California, which is pretty blue, Democrats found themselves very frustrated that the allegations of sexual harassment somehow were being met with deaf ears after they were the ones that screamed for so long that those allegations don't matter. They created the deaf ears. And I remember realizing that and just enjoying that moment and thinking, oh, you guys, you created this. And then the frustration. But we see that all the time. Coming up after traffic, NPR is suing the taxpayers over the executive order from Trump saying that we as taxpayers should not have to pay for this one news outlet, subsidizing their apparent failure to raise enough money on their own to be a self-sustained media entity like all other media entities except PBS. It's a very interesting perspective they have. How do you say you got it going on better than your neighbors without saying it? Well, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, that's how. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily want to set out making your neighbors feel all down about themselves and looking at their patio furniture and their lawn chair and thinking, man, we thought this was... Remember, we spent that entire weekend building this patio, and now some of the pavers are uneven, and there's grass growing up between them, and the one on the edge is falling off. We keep kind of putting dirt up underneath it, and it keeps, getting tilted down anyhow. And look at man, we suck. Don't worry about that. Just worry about yourself. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, hunterhardscapes.com, premier landscaping services, hardscaping. We're talking water features if you want, smokeless fire pits if you'd like, lighting, sound as part of your overall outdoor oasis, part of that outdoor living space they can design, create, put into place with premium products for you. That's Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. You can find them at hunterhardscapes.com. Also, Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. NPR, this is National Public Radio, and a trio of Colorado public radio stations suing the Trump administration in federal court over an executive order seeking to cease all federal funding to NPR and PBS. So this is Trump's executive order saying these two different media outlets, taxpayers no longer have to help pay for. The executive order, they claim in their statement, is a clear violation of the Constitution and the First Amendment's protection for freedom of speech and association and freedom of the press. Really? So does that mean, I can't speak for other media outlets, that because we also aren't forcing taxpayers to pay for us, that's a violation of our First Amendment rights? That's a violation of the Constitution that Springfield's Talk 1041 isn't taking some of your paycheck from you against your will? That is a novel interpretation. This elite sense of entitlement, I honestly think I would be embarrassed. This idea that they should not have to be financially self-sustained like every other media outlet in the country does. They don't have to produce a product that is valued enough to the community to where they can be self-sustaining. And they acknowledge it. That's the thing, that this is where I'd be embarrassed. I would be embarrassed. It's panhandling. This is media panhandling. How dare you not give us other people's money? I mean, at least with panhandling, you are asking people to voluntarily give you money. And while, PBS and NPR, that is part of the way that they do get their revenue, they also require, apparently as part of the Constitution, don't know exactly where that is in there, that they specifically, not the rest of us, that they specifically somehow have a right to your part of your paycheck to continue to exist. Now, they may claim, and legally they're not allowed to sell, quote, advertising. That's why you hear they have advertising, but it's, this program supported by, and so they use that verbiage so it doesn't count as advertising, but it is advertising. I'll be very interested to see where it is in the Constitution that they are guaranteed the right to your tax dollars in order to continue to be sustained financially. Maybe we're missing out. News in 60 seconds. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed, always trying to provide you with useful information, and it's one of the reasons that every morning show, throughout different parts of the morning show, I try to get you in the loop on the importance of Ozark's elder law, whether that is just preparing for your own demise or the demise of a loved one. You know, it's never fun. It isn't fun. If you are glad the loved one's gone, I mean, let's be honest, that happens sometimes. It's still not fun if you have to deal with that stuff. But oftentimes you have family that is relatively close-knit, or maybe they are very close-knit, and there hasn't been the real proper designation of what happens with the house, what happens with the jewelry, what happens with, mom's favorite painting, all of that stuff. And then a family that otherwise really does get along and loves each other finds themselves in this really uncomfortable position of everyone wants mom's favorite picture or painting, and, trying to argue why it is I should get it instead of you should get it. And it just creates such an uncomfortable and sometimes unnecessary conflicting scenario at a time in which everyone should be coming together. And you can avoid that by planning. You can make sure that you don't leave behind that sort of chaos. And you may think, oh, my kids won't have any trouble. I'm just telling you, in those times, you can't really always predict the way it is that people are going to act and what they're going to feel in their heart. And so it's a real parting gift that we can all give our loved ones, and it's to make sure that we have all that stuff taken care of. But I downloaded a will for $149 online. That ain't going to work for you. I'm just telling you. If it does, you are dodging an absolute bullet and as lucky as can be. But odds are it won't. How do you know whether it will or not? Just do a consultation with Ozark's Elder Law. They got 10 area locations. Surely one is going to be close to you. And that consultation's free. And then they'll let you know what you need to do in order to be ready for that time and exactly what it will cost. One price to take care of the service. OzarksElderLaw.com, also KSGF.com, Nick's endorsements. Talking about this, which to me seems like a novel approach from NPR and PBS, or NPR specifically, along with three local Colorado NPR affiliates, arguing that it is unconstitutional to not force taxpayers to pay for part of their existence. Now, it's been a while since I've read from top to bottom Constitution and all the amendments. Don't remember seeing anything about NPR and PBS in there, that they have a constitutional right. They say it's a violation of the First Amendment to not force you and I to pay for them. One of the text messages sent in by one of you, local PBS TV has advertising telling me that PBS is free. I pay taxes. They get part of my taxes. I pay unwillingly. That's a really good point. They do oftentimes lead with that, right? Particularly when they're looking for donations. That way, we can provide all of this free programming. Is it really free? If you're taking the President of the United States to court in order to stop him from saying, you know what, people don't have to pay for your existence any longer, that doesn't seem free to me. It seems pretty much like we're forced to pay for that. You can listen to this show, and you can listen to some of their shows. They're clearly more educated than I am, so I'm sure they have constitutional insight to the issues of freedom of speech and freedom of the press that I can't even begin to comprehend. So you just have to forgive me for that. We got Heroes Breakfast coming up Friday. If you are a veteran, you're going to get free breakfast at Scramblers, our Friday Road Show sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air. And then every so often, we like to do that free breakfast for y'all that are veterans. Of course, doors are open for everyone at 6 o'clock, but you do get that free breakfast if you are a veteran. Coming up, I want to play the story that aired on Ozark's First. I believe it was, last night. And it is regarding what some are saying is a rush job to approve David Cameron as the new city manager of Springfield. Now, David Cameron has been the city manager of Republic apparently for like 8 years. I mean, I remember when he got hired, but time just goes by so fast, I guess. David Cameron has been I don't know that you would necessarily. I mean, I guess controversial is the right term to use, because there have been. Let's put it that he's controversial, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has earned any or all of it. I think that's up for interpretation. But what I do find to be somewhat amusing is, as usual, Springfield is demonstrating in the minds of many Springfield residents that they don't give two licks what the citizens think. And the new mayor is already, I'm going to be a mayor for the people. And he is being accused of rushing this thing through and totally ignoring the feedback from the constituents. And it's just typical Springfield. It is absolute typical Springfield. But I want to play for you this story because there's some interesting audio coming up here in just a couple of moments. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Thursday, showers with a high near 68. And looking ahead to Friday, sunny skies with a high near 74.
Reading from earlier, there was that text message regarding how PBS in particular is always talking about, so we can have free programming for people like you. It's like, they take some of my taxpayer dollars. That is not free when you're taking money from me against my will. Another text coming in saying, I listen to you and I don't pay anything. Yes, we can genuinely and authentically and honestly tell you as a listener that our product to you is free, as opposed to some who require or beg or lobby, or in this case with NPR suing the taxpayers in order to force you to pay for their product, whether you listen to it or not, whether you find it to be a valuable service to the community or not. We demonstrate that we clearly are a benefit to the community because we are self-sustained, because of local advertisers that find that we have enough of a listener base that they are able to get their word out here, and that they touch enough of you that they end up getting a return on that investment. That is a demonstration that we have a product that is of value, literal value to the community. And so we are able to do that for you without taking any of your money against your will, though that can't be said, of course, for PBS and NPR. All right, everyone. The city of Springfield has been grappling with whether or not to hire this new city manager, David Cameron, who has been the city manager in Republic. And I'll tell you just, listen, public chatter and perception is very often inaccurate. Sometimes it's very accurate as well. My purpose in talking about this right now isn't like really who's right or wrong, but it's just the overall relationship and perception of the community at large versus the way that the government that is supposed to represent the community at large is handling the situation. And David Cameron, someone that came along in Republic at a time of tremendous growth in Republic. Now, he is, if you talk with people who have been involved in managing or involved in government during that period of growth, they oftentimes cite him as helping navigate Republic through that, the Amazon facility being one of those. Now, some people don't like all that, by the way. Some people do not like that Republic is becoming this massive growth area. They liked it when it was quiet and quaint, and it wasn't a nightmare to drive on 60 between 4:15 and 6:15, in the afternoon. It has just grown incredibly. It's just really crazy, the rate of growth. Some people don't like that at all. So that in and of itself. Now, there have been a number of other things, of course, that have occurred in Republic over the past several years, some of which we've talked about. This aquatic center, which a lot of people were not supportive of, though the people voted for it. People, they said, we want this, those who voted. But then there was the opening, and by the way, we're going to jack up the prices, which I think a lot of people thought, because as citizens of Republic, they were paying for it. They did not necessarily have to pay a significant increase in fees. And then there were some just perceptual challenges, like the season pass for the new aquatic center in Republic costing the same or a little bit more than a season pass to Silver Dollar City. That's sort of a hard thing to overcome, perceptually speaking. Then the water rates have spiked massively. Water sewage rates for citizens in Republic. This is because of EPA requirements. And so there have been a number of things that have occurred that have over time made people in Republic feel as if the community is becoming less accommodating to people on limited incomes, I guess you could say. At the same time, David Cameron, he's guiding this, and then there was that increase in his salary, and where he was just making a lot of money. For a lot of people, like, how he's making how much? Now, I don't know that. I think most people, even people who complain, if they were in his position and the city said, hey, we're going to pay you this much, most people would say, okay. I don't think a lot of people would be like, you know what, that's just too much. It's wrong for me to take that money. This is observations of the community and the government. So it's been talked about for a long time in Republic that Springfield that he was going to go to Springfield. This isn't anything that is new. People who follow what goes on in Republic for months and months and months have been saying he's going to be going over there to Springfield. And of course, that is what eventually happened. Now, generally, these things are non-controversial. However, this one is just a little bit different. Ozarks First had a story about it that aired last night. And I'm just going to play it for you in its entirety here.
Mayor has really, really ignored the process for the people and the voice of the people. And it's not a great start for his term. And I think his leadership is at question.
The mayor of Springfield casting the deciding vote to hire a new city manager and pay David Cameron a $350,000 salary. Ozarks First, Parker Paget, live in Springfield tonight. Parker City Council was split right down the middle until that tie-breaking vote.
Yeah, in a last attempt to push this vote back, Councilman Craig Hosmer motioned to table the vote until at least June. Now, that failed 5-4 initially, with new Mayor Jeff Schrag casting that tiebreaker vote. After concerns were heard, the vote continued, and again, 5-4, with Mayor Jeff Schrag breaking that tie. And I talked to residents who took issue with the faster than usual process for hiring David Cameron, and heard from council members on both sides of this tally.
The council has circumvented the process of making this very, very important decision for the entire city.
Angela Pryor, a concerned resident, quickly left the Denny Wayne conference room after City Council voted 5-4 to hire former Republic City Manager David Cameron for the open position.
We wanted them to restart the search process.
The initial vote could have been delayed, but a motion by Councilman Craig Hosmer to table the vote for later failed.
And so the question I have today is, why are we rushing the process now?
New Mayor Jeff Schrag says the sped-up process was due to a timely manner.
I do not think there is enough time between the official vote and the start date. Therefore, I have deemed the vote to be time sensitive.
Councilman Callie Carroll voted yes, agreeing with Schrag.
And I do think it's the right choice, especially considering we would have had to push it to the end of the month with council members being absent for the next meeting. So I do think it was the right thing to move forward with this. We haven't had a city manager for 7 months. It's time to move forward.
Councilman Hosmer also took issue with the salary Cameron will bring home.
We also promised ourselves that the $150,000 salary was going to attract someone from the big city, with the big city problems the city of Springfield faces. Instead, we're going 6 miles away to a city that's 1/10 the size of the city of Springfield.
He's collaborative. He brings people to the table. He's solutions oriented. He also holds himself and others accountable. And that's what I want in a city manager.
Our new mayor has really, really ignored the process for the people and the voice of the people. And it's not a great start for his term. And I think his leadership is questioned.
Cameron was not at the meeting today. We're told he had a previously scheduled mental health retreat, but he did issue a statement through the city saying that he is excited to work with city staff, community leaders, and residents in what he calls a new season of growth, challenge, and opportunity. Cameron's first day is July 7th. Reporting live in Springfield, Parker Paget, Ozarks First.
Can I start off by asking, mental health retreat?
I was just about to ask you that. What is a mental health retreat?
Yeah, I don't know, but you know how weird culturally we have become with giving things fancy names. I don't know. Is this a new name for vacation? Like, is this what it's called? In order to, like, vacation seems like, well, that's just for fun. So you call it a mental health retreat. Like, it's something that's really needed and warranted. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I've heard that term used before, a mental health retreat, because part of me thinks that just, is that vacation? Because that's kind of what vacation is, right? Or is this something else? I don't know. Whatever. That really stood out to me, though. Did that stand out to you?
Yeah.
Mental health retreat. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, this just has Springfield written all over it for a number of reasons. One, as I mentioned earlier, this for months, for a very, very long time, has been, quote, known that this was going to happen among certain circles. I mean, I've known about it. So already this has the appearance of the city just pretending to take this up for discussion, that all of this, it's just the fix is in, if you will. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that David Cameron's done anything wrong or nefarious or unethical, but I just get, Springfield has this way of pretending as if it's just weighing an issue when you've known for 6 months or further back that this is already in the plans, it's already in the works. And so just this whole fake presentation stuff, either that or it's just some soothsayers and amazing predictors out of the clear blue sky predicted that this was going to happen, and then amazingly it did through the whole interview process and everything else. I suppose it could be that, not very realistic. it sounds fishy to me that they are pushing it as like they just seem hell-bent. No, we got to do it right now. Have to do it right now. And this idea, well, his start date's going to be in July, and if we don't do this till June, that's just not going to be enough time. I don't buy that crap. And it may be unfair, but out of the gate, the new mayor to me seems like he's totally dishonest. That this whole, well, we just don't have time. I mean, a month won't be enough time for him to be prepared if we do, or, to do the paperwork. We got to onboard the guy. It's like, come on. That to have to bum rush this through when clearly there is a significant portion of the citizen population in Springfield that have questions about this. There are council members who have questions about this. And in the end, perhaps if you have a system that is honest and ethical in its approach here, perhaps maybe he would still be the pick and the right pick for the city of Springfield and the most wonderful pick ever. But this whole just, like, you got just enough with the new mayor in there. People on board say, no, we got to do this right now. It's time sensitive. We can't wait. Come on. Government? Really? Government that slogs through just about everything. This is the same city in which I've talked to countless business owners who have left or closed up shop, or when they've tried to open, talk about in fact, I was having a conversation with somebody that is involved in opening businesses and opened, several in the area. One was some in Springfield and then outside of Springfield. And they were shocked at how easy it was in some of the surrounding communities versus the nightmare in Springfield. How, you would think that the city of Springfield was just hell-bent on making it the most unfriendly environment for local business owners as possible. So that city government that takes the private industry and makes it a miserable process, delaying open week after week after week. Yet when it comes to hiring a new city manager, no, we got to be right on top. We can't let this delay. It just smacks of dishonesty. Now, again, none of this is a characterization of Cameron. And I know I keep saying that, but I'm not here to tell you one way or another. Time's going to tell how all that pans out. But this is a reflection of the city of Springfield and this continued path that they go down of apparent non-transparency, of our way or the highway, rushing things through if they want. I suspect that this was supposed to just happen very quickly, very quietly, with no questions asked, but there were some council members, whether it was at the behest of citizens or because they legitimately had questions, but it just seems like a pattern with this city, and that is anytime there is, I don't want to say an uprising, but an interest in what is going on with the city by citizens, you can almost guarantee the city is going to take the opposite position of the citizens with this amazing consistency. We've got to take a break. A few more thoughts on this coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. All right, weather in just a moment. Streaming live, KSGF.com. And we're also on YouTube. You can Search up Springfield's Talk 1041. Find us there as well. A traffic update.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 72. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Thursday, showers with a high near 68. And on Friday, sunny skies with a high near 74.
All right, some of the text messages here. Let's see. I don't have anything against the guy talking about David Cameron, the new city manager. I simply don't know anything about him. My issue is that why do we have a mayor and a city manager all in the first place? This is so important. We need to rush it. It's been 7 months. The vast majority of cities have a mayor or manager, not both. Total waste should be the issue talked about. I don't know what the percentage of cities that have only one or the other versus both. I am familiar with the fact that most cities have both of these, but when there's a city manager, or if there is a city manager, I shouldn't say both. It is not an uncommon situation, let me put it this way, for there to be a city manager and a mayor, but when that is the case, the mayor essentially runs council meetings, and that's it. That is all the mayor does. The mayor will show up and do some ribbon cuttings and crap like that. But other than that, it is to run council meetings and it is to be a tie-breaking vote. Outside of that, the mayor is irrelevant. And the city manager is the one that is actually running everything. Now, some cities don't have a city manager because that's what the mayor does. The mayor is essentially the city manager, and they, of course, get paid a salary. Now, the mayor, like council members, they don't really get anything substantial in terms of pay in the city of Springfield, which is why you have a city manager that is charged with actually running the direction of the city and the operations and so forth. And frankly, oftentimes there's a philosophical debate as to which is better. Some people believe that there should not be a city manager because the person who is running the city should be held accountable by the taxpayers, by the voters. So if the people don't like the way that the city is operating, then they can vote that person out. Other people argue that no, having a city manager is the best way to go about it because then they are not affected by politics, which ultimately, let's be realistic, isn't really true. I mean, it's like saying a chief of police isn't affected by politics. Well, they are affected by politicians because you have the city council and you have the mayor, and so you can't fully separate the two. But that is, for a lot of people, where that divide falls in terms of what's the best way to run a city. I don't know the answer to it. I think it probably depends on whether I don't know. It may be a mixed bag. I don't really have a hard opinion one way or another on it. I do find it amusing that one of in the story we played, I think it was Hosmer, he noted that, quote, "We also promised ourselves that $350,000 salary was going to attract someone from a big city that dealt with big city problems in the city of Springfield that Springfield faces. Instead, we're going 6 miles down the road to a city that's 1/10 the size of the city of Springfield." Well, this does not surprise me. Again, city of Springfield, you mean there may have been some dishonesty in the reason for offering such a high salary? Oh, that's such a shocking revelation. Even if that were true, this was the thought I had. What big city are you going to look to that has tackled the problems of big cities successfully? Do these people exist? This is such a typical government approach to things. Now, in my mind, the only reason that you would hire a city manager from a big city, because Springfield is beginning to have big city problems, is if that city manager turned things around and made them better. If, for example, you had Kansas City or St. Louis or some city that has a city manager that is running things, and they went in, and 10 years later, my goodness, spending's under control, government's more efficient, we got crime under, people, we've got a culture of respect here. I mean, everything's going swimmingly. You're on the front page of national magazines, and you're the focus of whatever these national gatherings of major city mayors are. Like, how do they do it? How do they make this happen? How did they take what was a city spiraling out of control with homelessness and poverty and crime and education, and they turned it around for the positive because we want to hire that person? Does that even exist anywhere? But see, that doesn't matter because results don't matter. All that matters is, well, we thought we'd get somebody from a big city because they have big city problems. Well, did they solve the big city problems? Well, no. But why nitpick over such things? This whole scenario just has City of Springfield written all over it. From the appearance, based off of the fact that for a significant amount of time now, people have been saying, oh yeah, this is in the works, this is going to happen. So it's the appearance that all of this was, if you want to use the term, rigged ahead of time. It was all planned out. So the interviewing and, that whole charade, in my opinion, of, oh, we're going to have a town hall where people can meet all these different candidates. And people, by the way, in Republic were going, joke's on you, the guy's already chosen. This is already going to happen. Now, it could be coincidence. And that here you again have people in the city, and increasingly people in Springfield don't bother to participate because the city of Springfield has consistently behaved in a manner that tells the citizens, we're not going to listen to you anyway. And so it's becoming less and less common to have people stand up in the city and show up and express an interest in what's going on in the city. And here they do. And once again, what is the answer? No, we got to rush this. We got to rush this through. We got to get this done right away. Have to get this done immediately. Why? Really? In a city that when it comes to private industry and getting permits so that businesses can open, it's all about delay, 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 delay. Suddenly there's this newfound enthusiasm to expedite things. Hypocrisy, contradictions. This scenario tailor-made for the city of Springfield. Now, for the sake of Springfield, the hope, of course, is that David Cameron turns out to be an excellent pick and that he has the leeway and the ability to implement changes that will turn things around so that we aren't dealing with, as Councilman Hosmer referred to them, as big city problems. But I got to be honest with you, I don't think anyone who has the know-how or ability to do that would be allowed to do it in the city of Springfield, because that's not how we do things, see. I'll say that right now, I will sing this guy's praises for just one thing, and that is turn around the anti-small business climate in the city of Springfield when it comes to the permits and inspections and everything else that businesses go through. And I'm not saying that those things shouldn't happen, but I'm telling you again, last week just had a conversation with somebody that was instrumental in getting permits. And after dealing with Springfield, one of the satellite communities was shocked at how easy it was there versus Springfield. I in the 15 years that I've been on this station, that is one thing that has never changed, and that is the local business owner in Springfield pulling their hair out over how brutally anti-business the city is and how they treat business owners in a hostile manner. Now, that doesn't mean everyone in the city. And don't get me wrong, oftentimes the business owners do note, oh, dealing with this person over here in this division, they were not a problem at all. They were nice as can be. But the city is knowingly continuing to create this horrific environment for business owners when it comes to just open. And these are people's livelihoods. The people who are most negatively impacted by this stuff are local business owners. The big mega businesses, they can handle it. They're used to it. They're used to opening in Kansas City and St. Louis. Maybe you got to pay under the table, or you got to wait 8 months or a year. You got to get these permits. And so they're accustomed to all these costs. But here you have some husband and wife duo that takes out a second mortgage on their home in order to put all of, everything they have into their hopes and dreams of being a small business owner in the city of Springfield, and they're treated like crap. If David Cameron can turn that around, I'll buy him a big cake. Assuming he likes cake. If not, then I'll get him whatever treat that he likes. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. FBI Director Dan Bongino has announced an investigation into the violent attack on a Christian rally in Seattle last weekend. And as additional information is revealed, it becomes more and more disturbing here. Not only the mayor's characterization of what happened, but what some, including police, are suggesting may have been a setup by someone in the city, if not the mayor, to specifically put the Christian rally in the targets of left-wing activists that they knew would result in violence. Now, as far as Dan Bongino's announcement, this was last night, that the FBI is investigating the violent attack on the Christian rally and concert in a Seattle park on Saturday. The Christians were attacked by Antifa and transgender activists. Seattle police ended up arresting 23 violent protesters, but asked the organizers to shut down the permitted rally in the face of the violent attack, which they voluntarily did. Seattle's Democrat Mayor Bruce Harrell, in a statement on the violence, blamed the Christians for the attack and questioned the city's granting a permit in the first place. Bongino saying, quote, "We have asked our team to fully investigate allegations of targeted violence against religious groups at the Seattle concert. Freedom of religion isn't a suggestion." Yes, but Christians are generally conservatives. Oftentimes they are Trump supporters, and so they're evil. And that means that it's fair game. After the targeted attack on the Christians, the mayor released a statement saying Seattle's proud of our reputation as a welcoming, inclusive city for LGBTQ plus communities, and we stand with our trans neighbors when they face bigotry and injustice. Today's far-right rally was held here for this very reason, to provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are inherently opposed to our city's values in the heart of Seattle's most prominent LGBTQ plus neighborhood. So here you have the mayor of Seattle saying it's their fault that they got violently attacked. It's their fault because their beliefs don't align with the LGBT community and they don't align with Seattle. Apparently, Seattle's belief system is in alignment with attacking Christians violently. A day does not go by in which Democrats do not demonstrate their attempt, and sadly, somewhat successfully so, to normalize violence. This isn't just normalizing it, it's justifying it. It is validating it. Meanwhile, Stephen Green reporting that violence returned to Seattle this past weekend, and it has police fuming about the city's, quote, naive or deliberate decision to make the attacks inevitable. Seattle police reported at least 23 arrests on Saturday at Cal Anderson Park during May Day USA's Don't Mess With Our Kids rally and the pro-LGBT counter-protest. According to the Seattle Times, roughly 500 people attended the prayer rally, and as many turned out in protest. Police ordered the LGBTQ counter-protesters to, quote, back away from officers and to stop throwing items at officers, but instead fighting broke out. So here, this is one of those instances when attacking law enforcement is apparently warranted. The Seattle Police Officers Guild, SPOG, said on X Saturday night that they don't have, quote, the proper staffing to handle any more of these demonstrations that turn into mass arrest. They also warned that the city lacks the political will to allow police to use the necessary tools to hold back criminal mobs to protect life and property. So in other words, criminals are running the city. And they really truly are when the mayor has the back of the criminals. This is the leftist utopia that so many of us grew up hearing about. Just wait. Just wait until the left. They've got a few generations under their belt, uninterrupted of running cities, and you will see the results. The great utopia. This is their version of it. Again, this story cites Mayor Bruce Harrell blaming the Christians for having a rally. In other words, they deserved it. Now, apparently, The group applied to hold their event at Victor Steinbruch Park, but the city denied that permit and instead required them to hold their rally at Cal Anderson Park, which is in the heart of Antifa land. The mayor has now ordered Parks and Rec to review whether there were legal location alternatives or other adjustments that could have been pursued before issuing the permit. So either, unbeknownst to the mayor, though he has justified this violence, somebody else within the city deliberately had this rally held in an area which it was clear it increased the likelihood of Christians being attacked, or the mayor was involved and he's covering his butt because the police are calling them out on this and noting this was a deliberate move by someone in the city to put them in the crosshairs as a Christian organization. And so now the mayor is saying, well, we need to have an investigation to see exactly why this happened. Well, we know why. Part of the deliberate normalization of violence from the Democrat Party. Daily, the stories reveal themselves, and this is just another. Fortunately, we have an FBI with the Deputy Director Dan Bongino that is on top of this. You think about the world of difference between this administration and the previous one. This is an administration that actually investigates when a victim is a victim and a criminal is a criminal, as opposed to turning it upside down. Previous administration labeling parents as potential terrorists. Previous administration utilizing the FBI to infiltrate the Catholic Church to spy on Christians. They actively attempted to recruit members of the church to spy on fellow churchgoers and to report on them to the government? Trying to spread fear about Christian nationalism? While the current direction under President Trump is we have victims that were attacked. We need to investigate it. Because they were victims that were attacked. Not deciding who the victim is based on whether they're on our side or the other side. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. She is your go-to for the absolute premier, top of the line, creme de la creme service of buying homes and selling homes. She actually auditions, if you will, for the role. And if you have ever in the past, in fact, this is what I would recommend. If you got the time, you could do one of two things. You can either just straight up take the advice from me or the countless other people who have used your services and go straight to Emily Johnson for buying your next home or helping you sell your current home. Or you could randomly pick someone else and say, hey, I'd like to meet, get your thoughts, want to sell my home here. and then say, well, I'm just, going to talk with some other realtors, haven't decided yet, and then meet with Emily Johnson and see the difference. And oh, the difference you shall see. If you've been through the process in the past and it was somebody that, checked in with you every so often, oh, I found some homes you may be interested in, let's meet over there at 2 o'clock, that's pretty much bare minimum. Doesn't mean they're bad people. That's just not what she does. And you'll be able to tell the difference just from that very first interview, if you will, when you're deciding whether or not you're going to go the route of Emily Johnson, which I highly recommend. House Theory Realty, under Nick's endorsements, KSGF.com. We have a Heroes Breakfast on Friday, and this is a monthly, generally speaking, opportunity we have with some of our partners just to buy breakfast for veterans. Scramblers, of course, is instrumental in that. The Warriors Journey, which is an incredible organization, also helping foot the bill for that, as does Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, and Electrical, and Delta Roofing. Would not be able to do it with all of them. And you as well. You may recall we had that donut fundraiser at one point because this has become so popular, even with our incredible partners. It was, another revenue source that we were needing in order to continue to buy breakfast for veterans. And so you all and St. George's Donut there on National are incredibly instrumental in that as well. So it's just a big community thing that we do. And it'll be coming up again this Friday at Scramblers, 6 to 9. Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line. Kansas City Mo fired their $308,000 per year manager in March of 2025. The new city manager, Vasquez, is paid $265,000 annually. By the way, we are new to the Springfield area. We're so glad we don't live in Springfield. I worked in downtown Kansas City, Missouri for almost 2 decades. Well, welcome to the area, and love that you found this station. It is the best one. And unlike NPR and PBS, we do not force you out of your paycheck to subsidize us. So how about them apples? We're a step above. There was a focus group by the New York Times, there was a focus group that was done, and the New York Times had reporting on this, in which the Democrat Party strategists put this on. These people are so weird. And they ask people to describe the different political parties, Republicans and Democrats, by comparing them to animals. And what they found after the research, and there's 250 focus groups of swing voters. So this is a lot. And by the way, this wasn't just like a fun little internet, what animal are you? It wasn't that. This was the Democrats are so desperate just to try to figure stuff out. You just figure it out. How do we win? How do we win? The one thing that they refuse to entertain is the idea of coming up with policies that benefit Americans. That is out the window. And so they're doing this Rube Goldberg way of trying to figure out, okay, how is it that we win elections without providing results or producing results that are positive for people, for the constituents. And so, okay, well, let's do 250. I wonder how much this costs. Different focus groups, swing voters, and among other things, find out what animal do you associate with Democrats, what animal do you associate with Republicans. And what they found is, on average, Republicans are seen as apex predators. So, lions and tigers and sharks. While Democrats are typically tagged as tortoises, slugs, or sloths, being described as slow, plodding, and passive. Now, there was one Democratic man in Georgia who said a deer, but followed it up with in headlights, saying you stand there and you see the car coming, but you're going to stand there and get hit with it anyway. Now, this is a very interesting analysis, I guess, or because I have some different thoughts on this than I think a lot of other people do. Now, CNN, they had Florida Democrat Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz on, and she used to have a much higher position within the Democrat Party, but she was relegated some years ago to just being a congresswoman. And she was asked about this, and she sort of bristled, saying, I care about human beings. Well, these were Democrat researchers that did. She went on and on about how Democrats care about results and care about this entire thing was put on by Democrat researchers. But nonetheless, I mean, on one hand, this is perfect just in terms of perception of Democrats, but it is kind of misleading at the same time. First, let's get a latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 72. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Thursday, showers with a high near 68. And looking ahead to Friday, sunny skies with a high near 74.
Hey, we have a big surprise for you.
What is it?
Oh, well, not for you.
Oh,
For
yeah, I will
everyone else.
I will leave now.
Well, you benefit from it. We're doing one of our spin the wheel last minute opportunities to win last minute lunch bunch at Retro Metro with us.
Spin the wheel.
Oh, and it's you. Okay, so how is it that you win? You text the word bunch
That is correct.
to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 417-447-KSGF. I'll give that number again in a moment. This is for today. They open at 11, but, if it's easier for you to meet 11:30 or noon, you can bring up to 5 people with you to have lunch with Sarah and me at Retro Metro, but you don't have to have that many people. Sometimes people are like, oh, I can only get 3. No, that's fine. That's totally cool. It can just be one of you if you want. But this is one of those fun, rare instances in which just for a variety of different reasons, we don't have one booked. We have next week and the subsequent week booked, but this one is open. And so if you want to join us today, then text the word bunch to 417-447-KSGF. Now, you also have to keep an eye on your phone because then you will be contacted and told if you won. So what we don't want is at 1 o'clock, you're like, oh, look, they texted me at 9 o'clock or called me and told me I won, because by then it's too late. Okay. So, and we've had before when we've done this, like what the first 2 people contacted, oh, I can't go today.
Yeah.
So
Please make sure that you can come today.
it's pretty simple. Now, I understand sometimes you oh gosh, I forgot I had a lunch meeting. I can't do it. I do understand that. But so that is for today. They open at 11. We can meet that early, or again, whatever time is most convenient for you. Just text the word bunch. And if you've never been to Retro Metro for a lunch bunch or lunch at all or dinner, then it's going to be quite a treat for you. It's a great place. Fantastic. Delicious. A focus group run by a Democrat Party strategist show a consistent response when asked to describe Republicans and Democrats using animals, according to a report this last weekend by the New York Times that also reported on a $20 million proposed study to help Democrats understand young male voters. They lost to President Donald Trump in this year's election cycle. Again, I know perhaps I'm a bit redundant on this point, but the fact that the Democrat Party has just given up trying to produce positive results, that's not even talked about anymore. How do we market ourselves? What do we pretend to be? How do we, quote, talk to young men in order to get them to like us? Well, we have to talk less like elites. Well, we have to talk more like this. Of all of the options that Democrats discuss and all of the millions and millions of dollars that they are preparing to spend to figure this out, none of it is about actually figuring out what works and then doing that in terms of policy for the American people. Now back to this study. One longtime Democratic researcher has a technique she leans on when nudging voters to share their deepest, darkest feelings about politics. She asks them to compare America's two major parties to animals. After around 250 focus groups of swing voters, a few patterns have emerged, said the researcher, Anat Schenken-Osorio. Republicans are seen as apex predators like lions, tigers, and sharks, beasts that take what they want when they want it. Democrats are typically tagged as tortoises, slugs, or sloths, slow, plodding, passive. Miss Schenken-Osorio perked up earlier this year when one Democratic man in Georgia suggested a very different kind of animal symbolizing the party, a deer, he said, in headlights. You stand there, you see the car coming, but you're going to stand there and get hit with it anyway. Now, CNN's John Berman asked Florida Democrat Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz about this morning. She kind of bristled, saying, I'm not focused on animals that some New York Times reporter compares to political parties. Well, it wasn't a New York Times reporter. It was a Democrat strategist. This is your party that's doing this. The New York Times just wrote about it. Now, I believe that this comparison, there's part of this that is accurate. It is interesting perceptions and the detachment from oftentimes reality. When this interpretation and this perception of Democrats as being slow, plodding, and passive is accurate when it comes to doing the job. When it comes to solving problems as an elected official. This is just look at Los Angeles. Look at the way it is that city has been dealing with the aftermath of the fires. We talked last week about Mandy Moore, a celebrity, noting that they're just making it a nightmare to get a permit to rebuild her house. And how, despite Gavin Newsom declaring that he was going to cut through all the red tape so that construction could begin immediately, as of the writing of that Mandy Moore story a week or two ago, only 5 permits had been issued. 5. In all of the homes that were 5 were issued, that was it. Look at how, now you may recognize some of this is deliberate, but Democrats, when it comes to the border and claiming, oh no, we want to secure the border, well, look at the results. Every Democrat that runs in a primary, which is the general election in cities like Chicago and New York, what they run on, oh, we're going to get crime under control. Does it happen? No. Everything they are ever put in charge of. Oh, we're really going to make this thing more efficient. It never happens. Now, some of that is the nature of government, but some of it also is just the nature of the Democrats' approach to things. And that is, for them, winning elections is the whole point. It's not actually governing. It's just to win and get that power. So the perception by swing voters that Democrats represent tortoises, slugs, or sloths, I think that's an accurate a perception when you look at how it is that they actually govern. Now, the perception of Republicans as lions, tigers, and sharks, I would say that perception is solely because of the existence of Donald Trump. To me, the idea that when it comes to domestic politics in particular, the Republican Party represents these, we're going to go out and we're going to get them like apex predators, we're going to get what we want, and we're going to fight till the end. To me, that's laughable. I mean, Republicans... Now, Trump is different. And this is where I think Republicans are benefiting from Trump, because Trump is that. And by the way, this is part of the reason that Trump soared to popularity first within the Republican Party, because Republicans were tired of the John McCains, of the Mitt Romneys, of the Jeb Bushes, the mamsy-pamsy, well, now we need to reach across the aisle, and we've got to compromise with the Democrats, and now don't say that, that's too harsh, don't say Barack Obama's middle name, and constantly apologizing for things that they didn't need to apologize for. I mean, that, to me, was a representation of the Republican Party as campaigning political figures dealing in the world of politics. Trump, yes, Trump shark, Trump apex predator, Trump the lion, Trump the tiger. But the Republican Party is just benefiting from that. Now, back to the Democrat Party. When it comes to governing, and as I said, it is an accurate portrayal that they're slothy and slow plotting, but they are the apex predators when it comes to the acquisition of power. This is the political party that tries to imprison political opposition. This is the political party that calls people they dislike Nazis. This is the political party that compares ICE agents to the Klan. This is the political party that puts a target on political opposition, that encourages, through their rhetoric, their supporters to go key Teslas and to shoot up individuals at Jewish embassies. And I mean, you just look at the number of assassination attempts and shootings that there have been by Democrat activists, and when one looks into the letters to the editor or their little manifestos, they're all just repeating and regurgitating Democrat talking points. They will cheat, and they do it to each other. They went in this last election and did everything they could to have Cornel West, a black man, kicked off the ballots where they thought it would hurt them. They worked to have RFK Jr. kicked off the ballot. They worked to have Susan Stein kicked off the ballot. They worked to have Donald Trump kicked off the ballot. I mean, this is how they operate when it comes to the acquisition of power. The juxtapositioning between the perception of the two political parties done by this Democrat strategist and researchers, and the view that the swing voters, and increasingly Democrats, this is one of the interesting things, it's the Democrats who see their party as being these sloths and the tortoises and the slugs, but they don't recognize how bloodthirsty their party behaves when it comes to the attempt to acquire power. And how different it is. Can you imagine the time and effort and focus Democrats put into winning elections or stealing elections, if they put that into actually trying to run a city successfully and focused on results, not rhetoric? If the amount of time and effort and focus they put into trying to get Donald Trump put in prison, trying to imprison January 6ers and paint them as insurrectionists, if they simply put that effort into, mayor of Chicago, whatever, all right, what works, what doesn't work, okay, that didn't work, let's try something else, they could have miraculous results. But again, when you're a political party that has abandoned any attempt to have positive results for the voters, that becomes somewhat irrelevant to you as a party. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Yep, any and all of your home loan needs, that is the place to go. The site itself actually has valuable information. It isn't like a lot of financial institutions that as a service, like, oh, here's the page that you go to, and you're just going to put your name, your social security number, and your phone number, and some other bits of information, and that is what automatically starts the process. There's contact info, and then there's just valuable information. Again, if you may be in the preliminary stages of trying to decide whether or not it's the right time for you to do a refinance or a reverse mortgage, or what a reverse mortgage is. And if any of the information that you are looking for, questions you have, aren't on the site, reach out to someone from the team. They are not there to try to suck you in. Like, well, now that you've called, we better get the process started. No, whatever. They're information sources first and foremost, so that you can make the best decision for yourself possible. And then they're there to help guide you through it if you do decide it is the right time for you. I want a greathomeloan.com, because you do.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 72. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Thursday, showers with a high near 68. And looking ahead to Friday, sunny skies with a high near 74.
The Politico has written a piece, and it is encouraging Democrats to set up what they refer to as a shadow cabinet to counter Trump. Now, this sounds a little more nefarious than it actually is. You think shadow government, and it's just like they're in the shadows, right? Which the irony of this is that their whole point is that this would be the opposite of a shadow government. Not only would they not be in the shadows, but essentially you create, their argument here, they're just calling it shadow government, or shadow cabinet rather, a coalition of Democrats that can go out there and be good spokespersons against Trump. Not even necessarily for Democrats, but just against Trump. And the piece in Politico here arguing that Democrats are very unsuccessful at this, and so they should just create this new loose collection of Democrats, which, by the way, don't have to be elected. They don't have to be elected Democrats, so that they can go out and really be effective in better messaging. Now, this is another instance of Democrats just recognizing that they're failing and attempting to do something ultimately that is not any different than what they've been doing, but just changing up the name of it to a degree or the format of it to a degree. As if the lack of a shadow government is the messaging problem here. The messaging problem for the Democrats are the Democrat beliefs. It is the belief system that is held by Democrats and their refusal to recognize that increasingly they are in the minority in this country. They keep thinking if you just, dress it up as something different, all of a sudden the American people are going to start agreeing with them on forcing girls to shower and compete against boys, or sex change operations for kids, or praising and lionizing wife-beating gangbangers from other countries. It doesn't matter how you dress that messaging up. It doesn't matter if you call it a shadow cabinet or ambassadors to the people, or give it any whatever name you want to call it, as long as the messaging is the same. It's the lipstick on a pig. And they just keep wanting to change the color of the lipstick. But they keep telling, the people, presenting the people with the pig. And the people are like, that's still a pig. Some of the people, now they go through and they give a listing of people that they believe would be a good pick to be in this so-called cabinet. And basically, it's called a cabinet in this capacity. So there needs to be a shadow cabinet member that is the Secretary of Commerce, that every time the Trump administration, director of commerce or commerce secretary is out there talking, then this is who the Democrats would send out to counter it. Again, they already do this. It's just their message is bad. Do you know who this is? Politico. Letitia James is who they argued should be the shadow attorney general. This is the woman who is under investigation for mortgage fraud or loan fraud or whatever. And allegations, by the way, that much like the Hunter Biden situation, it isn't whether he did it or not. I mean, he didn't pay his taxes, for example. He was on trial for not paying his taxes. No one argued. His defense was that he was too hopped up on drugs to know any better, and so he should have been found not guilty for it. Well, it's the same thing with Letitia James. These false claims that she made in order to obtain loans, she did it. I mean, it's in the paperwork. This isn't a question of whether or not she did it. She did do it. What her defense will be, we have yet to see. But she's also the woman who campaigned on, if you elect me, I will figure out a way to get Donald Trump. Politico believes that this is the person that the American people are going to start listening to, as opposed to Pam Bondi. That when Pam Bondi is out there as Attorney General, Letitia James is the person that is going to win Americans over. Now, you want to talk about not getting this stuff figured out? Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Jon Stewart. I don't know about you, but Jon Stewart has been pretty vocal against the Trump administration. This, again, not working. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Giselle Fetterman. That's John Fetterman's wife. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to set up a Joe Biden scenario again, in which there have been, reports and allegations that to some degree Giselle is the one who's calling the shots for John Fetterman. But, again, what about this does the left believe to be some sort of winning formula? Bill Nye, the quote science guy. This is a guy who got his start. He played a science guy on a local kids TV show, I think out on the West Coast, like Seattle or Portland or somewhere like that. And then he, became a caricature of a scientist. And of course, he has an interest in science. He's politicized. Politics leads science, or it's politics is more important to him than science is. But this is the guy for Environmental Protection Agency Administrator. Secretary of Commerce, Mark Cuban. You notice all these people are just straight up Trump derangement syndrome, folks. What was the Small Business Administration? Nikki Glaser. Now, some of you are familiar with her. She actually, did we give away tickets? We gave away tickets to her show, didn't we? She was at the Galois or the Q. She was at one of the facilities. I think arguably she is the most high-profile and coveted female comedian in the U.S. right now, if not the most. She certainly is one of them. And incidentally, listen to this. We'll use her as an example here. Nikki Glaser, shadow administrator of the Small Business Administration. This is a write-up in Politico. They believe this is the key to winning people back over, to have these people represent the Democrat side to the public in order to counter Trump. They write, what is a comedian but a small business entrepreneur and traveling content salesperson? Of course, Nikki Glaser's value to a Democrat shadow cabinet is not her deep knowledge of how government regulation impacts the small businesses. It's that she has become America's roaster-in-chief who can fearlessly pick apart the biggest celebrities from Tom Brady to Alec Baldwin. And while her sex-positive comedy has feminist overtones, she is a welcome guest on the biggest testosterone-laden podcast like the Joe Rogan Experience and Theo Vaughn that are consumed by the young males who Democrats are eager to reach. She's not known for political humor, but when she goes there, she cuts deep. Looking directly at Ann Coulter, she once declared, the only person you'll ever make happy is the Mexican who digs your grave. This was on Ann Coulter does sort of fish out of water, it seems to a lot of people. The roasts, celebrity roasts. Ann Coulter gets invited to, and she goes to these. Anyhow, that's where that comment, I believe, was made. Discussing why she needs to wear makeup to, quote, look like a woman, in her Someday You'll Die stand-up special, she observed, if I ask you to draw a smiley face And I was like, now make it a girl. You wouldn't make it like holding less money. You would just draw eyelashes on it. If Democrats want someone who can whoop Trump or any of his surrogates on small business policy or anything else, they'd be hard-pressed to find a better warrior. Now, that entire description is an admission that when it comes to the issue of what small businesses go through in this country, she has no knowledge. She has nothing to contribute. But it's all presentation. Oh, Joe Rogan likes her. Guys like her. She's a guy's girl, and so Democrats need guys. It's all window dressing. This isn't an answer to the Democrats' communication problem. This is a doubling down on it. You pick these people that don't actually have any sort of factual basis in reality when it comes to the particular issues of the day. Oh, but they're flashy and they're sassy because it's all about this misguided attempt by the left to win people over through superficial means. That or just flat out condemning the political opposition as being Hitler and evil. And so, of course, who wants to be evil? No one does, right? Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. The first day of summer is right around the corner, which means hotter
When
weather.
is it?
It's like the second week of June, so it really is
Okay.
just right around the corner. I'm not a liar.
No, I just didn't know when it was.
Yeah, I think it's
or
the
if
second.
it sounds like you don't really know for sure.
It's
That's
like
kind of what I'm
June
getting from this.
15th, I want to say. I'm going to look it up after I do.
Really? I'll look it up while you're...
Do it. I think it's June 15th. But is your AC ready to handle the heat? If not, no worries, because I want to tell you about Russell and his team over at Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. They have over 35 years experience, and one of my favorite things about the Foreman team is that they are not high pressure on sales. I know this to be true because my AC is almost the same age as me, and not once have I had the Foreman team try to pressure me into a new unit. But when it is time to get my new unit, I will be using Russell and the Foreman team. So if it is time to get ahead of that warmer weather, schedule that AC tune-up with Foreman Mechanical today. Now you can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com. Was I close?
Well, what would you define as close?
Is it June 15th?
No.
Uh-oh. What day
But
is
you
it?
could still be close. That's
Okay.
why I want to know what your definition of close. Like,
Like-
how close do you have to be for it to be
I
considered
don't know.
close?
A week?
Okay, yeah, it's the 20th.
Okay. So I was close.
I just wanted you to define close first, so, you know.
Well, I knew it was in a couple of weeks. So, once
Okay.
again, not a liar.
Well,
Stop.
there have been a couple of pieces out there from mainstream media about the not just waning influence, but the apparent disgruntled nature that some in the Democrat Party are having through Obama. NBC News had a triple bylined 40-plus paragraph piece titled "Obama World Loses Its Shine in a Changing, Hurting Democratic Party." And increasingly what is occurring is you have these Democrats out there, and I was scrolling through earlier, I didn't save it, but it was an MSNBC headline about some analyst, a Democrat analyst, criticizing people from Obama's world and how we need to get rid of these people. Part of the piece reads, more Democrats are openly criticizing Obama's strategists and consultants who are long treated as the high priests of their party's politics. Democratic National Committee officials at a news event last month blamed Obama and his lack of investment in state parties over his 2 terms for setting back local organizing, with the party still feeling the effects today. So they're retroactively. This isn't just, well, Obama screwed up this whole Biden thing. This is back when he was president of the United States. He wasn't focused on Democrat parties in the state. And so this complete lack of any bench, any leadership in the Democrat Party is because no seeds were planted back when Obama was president. The NBC piece continued, the so-called Obama coalition of voters, less politically engaged voters, younger voters, and voters of color, is no more. In 2024, each of those groups shifted towards Trump in high numbers. NBC notes, going forward, it could mark a clean slate for a party whose course for nearly 2 decades cascaded from decisions Obama had made. It was Obama who chose Biden as his vice president, offering him the elevated perch that set up his 2020 election and his aborted 2024 re-election. Obama selected Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State, then anointed her for the Democratic nomination in 2016 against Trump. The operatives Obama and his top aides empowered have carved out leading decision-making roles at the top of the Democrat Party since then. DNC Finance Chair Chris Korge lashed out at ex-Obama campaign manager David Plouffe in an interview with NBC News last week, saying he and other Obama alums share the blame, chiding them as the so-called gurus. Quote, it's time to reevaluate the use of consultants and bring in new forward-looking people, he said in an interview. The old Obama playbook no longer works. Now, I'm going to, of course, like I said, it's 40-plus paragraphs, this NBC piece. Now, this is the thing about Obama that I don't think anyone has even really thought about, because it runs counter to everything that we're supposed to know about Obama. And that is, he is not very good at this. He's not an exceptional politician. He isn't, I would say he's not even above average when it comes to successfully running a political party. His election as president for the presidency itself had nothing to do with him in terms of his efforts. He was anointed. The first he spoke at the Democratic National Convention, he was just, I believe he was a state senator. But the media went crazy over him. And you had other Democrats, and these are, the Harry Reids and the Joe Bidens, that went on and on about how great he was because he was articulate. I believe that was Harry Reid's comments, that he was an articulate black man, and so that was a winning strategy. And then Biden said I think Biden said he was clean and articulate. Harry Reid what was it he called him? It was something that should normally be considered demeaning and racist. But Democrats were so excited about this. And they got, Democrats are very good about that. They work themselves up into a hype. Most of the time, it doesn't land. They work them. Just give some example. Pete Buttigieg, he was the huge hype for a period of time. I know that's difficult to remember given his complete failure since then. Stacey Abrams, great example of a huge hype. These people that get this little spark of attention, and then for the sake of success, they build them up into something. Beto O'Rourke, another example. Now, for Obama, it worked, and I think we all know why. Because he was black. And it was presented as an opportunity for something historic to happen. And the media and the Democrat Party got everyone all excited about this historic change and righting the wrongs of the past. And the first Western leader that is a person of color, that we were going to be leading the world, and the pomp and the circumstance and the pageantry, and the hope and change, it all just, it was created. He was like a boy band creation. But look at ever since then. Now, again, I argue he didn't do any of that. That was done for him. He was carried through that. He managed not to screw it up, give him that. And he did so by being vague, being pretty likable, and, of course, having a media that would claim scenarios like Fast and Furious and Benghazi weren't scandals. But if you were to look at his big takeaway from his presidency, successful what would it be? The Iran nuclear deal? And then look at his picks, his propulsion of future leadership. Joe Biden. Don't know if you remember how that turned out, not just in terms of his vice presidency, but the train wreck it has subsequently created. Hillary Clinton. She was supposed to be an easy win against Donald Trump. As some of these Democrats are noting that the problems the Democrat Party is dealing with today go all the way back to when he was president and completely ignored the state-level grassroots Democrats. So there's been no planting of seeds. There's been no real training of up-and-coming leadership. So it's left to some of these nutcases like Crockett and Ocasio-Cortez who just scream the loudest, and so they're the ones who get the attention. I don't think, as the DNC finance chair claimed the old Obama playbook no longer works, I argue that there was no successful playbook of Obama's. He was handed that presidency by a country that wanted to be part of this wonderful historic change, and everything he's done since then has been a failure. And I think Michelle's beginning to think so too. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. All right, you missed any of the show, podcast, iTunes, Spotify, all that jazz. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.
Putin is crazy and playing with fire with no peace deal in sight.
Strikes in Ukraine. On Truth Social, Mr. Trump writes, what Vladimir Putin doesn't realize that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. President Trump has grown frustrated with Putin as Trump, tries to broker a Ukraine peace deal. Trade talks between the U.S. and the European Union are back on track.
After announcing a 50% tariff on EU goods on Friday, the president quickly agreed to delay those tariffs after a weekend phone call with the head of the European Commission. And now Donald Trump says the EU has called to quickly establish meeting dates. He writes on social media that this is a positive development, and he urges both the EU and China to open up for trade with the U.S., promising that both will be happy and successful if they do. Greg Clugston, Washington.
5 people wounded. A shooting yesterday afternoon at a shopping mall in Waterbury, Connecticut. Police say it began as a dispute between a couple of individuals, and things rapidly went downhill from there.
We do not believe this was a random act of violence. We believe this started as a conflict and it escalated. We do know that there was one gunman at this time we've identified. That gunman was armed with a semi-automatic pistol.
Waterbury Police Chief Fernando Spagnolo tells WFSB-TV that police are talking to a person of interest. SpaceX has launched its Starship mega rocket again after back-to-back explosions. This time it made it through the entire test flight last evening, but fell short of its main objectives when the spacecraft tumbled out of control and then broke apart. Watching Wall Street this morning, the Dow trading 11 points higher. The Nasdaq is down 5 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Mike Gallagher here, host of The Mike Gallagher Show. If you know me, you know I only put my name behind people and companies I trust. When it comes to mortgages, I trust Mike and Brian at Fellowship Home Loans. They're not just friends. They've done loans for me, my family. I've seen firsthand how they treat every client like their family. And these days, that personal touch really matters. With the cost of everything up, you might be looking for ways to free up cash. Maybe you're thinking about a cash-out refi or HELOC to finish some home projects, consolidate debt, or just get ahead financially. Fellowship is a full-service direct lender, not a broker. They cut out the middleman. That means faster decisions, fewer fees, and less stress. Whether you're buying your first home, downsizing, or refinancing to get some breathing room, they'll tailor fit the loan to your life. Get started at fellowshiphomeloans.com/MikeG, fellowshiphomeloans.com/MikeG, or call 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382.
Britain's King Charles